Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us on this Monday morning for House Calls Real Docs, Real Talk. I'm your host, Chelsea Helms. Today is part 2 of our series on the COVID-19 vaccine. If you were with us last week, you know we had an incredible discussion. We touched on precautions we still need to be taking while awaiting our shots. Today, we're going to examine the importance of actually getting that shot and to further encourage you to go ahead and get yours. Watch this.
Getting back to this, to her, to family, to friends, to hugs. For people at higher risk of COVID-19 complications because of diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart conditions, the COVID-19 vaccine is an important choice. Consider it's the first step towards getting back to what you miss so much safely. Getting back to life. Set your heart on it. It's up to you. A message from the American Heart Association.
I like that. Set your heart on it. Now, I personally miss the connection to hugs and just everyone we can be with. It's been such a long time since we've had that normalcy. And if you're like me, you're eager to resume your old life and get back to normal. Hopefully, our show today will help with that. But first, don't forget to hit that share button to let your friends and family know you are watching with us. We want them to watch this content too. We have such a wealth of knowledge and great information ahead, and everyone can truly benefit from it. Also, throughout the show, we are going to ask you to get involved by answering a couple of viewer questions. To respond, it's so easy. All you have to do is text AHA Live to 22333. You can see it there on your screen. AHA Live to 22333. We're not going to ask you your name, any information. It simply is just a fun way for you to answer. If maybe you don't want to text in, you can simply by participating by just dropping your answer in the comments section on where you're watching. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. With me this morning is Dr. Anne-Marie Navarre, Associate Professor of Cardiology at UT Southwestern Medical School in Dallas. Welcome, Dr. Navarre. Glad to have you back again this week.
Thanks, Chelsea. Really excited to be back here.
Yeah, we learned a lot from you and looking forward to learning even more. Before we begin, let's go ahead and start with our first viewer response question, though. And this one, it is a fun one. What is the first thing you'll do once COVID restrictions are lifted? Let's go ahead and take a look at our choices. Our choices are to travel, attend large indoor concerts, dine in a restaurant, shop in a mall, all of the above, or none of the above. So while we wait for those to go ahead and pop up on our screen, let's go ahead and talk through them. You know, I think a lot of this, Dr. Navarre, really has to do with your preference, yes, and your comfortability level, but also what's going on in the area you live.
Yeah, that's a really great point. You know, these aren't actually the same level of risk. And as we've seen already from what CDC has issued in terms of guidance for people with vaccinations, what we can do isn't all or nothing. So in fact, until we see rates of infection going down and immunization rates going up, CDC still recommends not undertaking non-essential travel. But they have said it's okay for example, vaccinated people to congregate without masks with other vaccinated people in small gatherings. So I think what we're going to see is, you know, a gradual lifting or changing of recommendations for what we should and shouldn't be doing, not necessarily sort of an all or nothing kind of lifting of the restrictions, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Already seeing a lot of people taking the time to let us know what they'd like to do more of. Looking like the top 3 choices are really what a lot of people are hoping to do here shortly. We've got travel, attend more events like concerts, and dine in those restaurants. So we still have a long ways to go before we can get there comfortably, but we are hopefully on the path forward. Let's go ahead with that said and move on to our next segment, Health in the Headlines. We select one current headline that ties back to the topic at hand and ask our expert to respond. This week's entry comes to us from Healthline. The title is, How Safe is the COVID-19 Vaccine? Dr. Navarre, obviously a great article to kick off the show with us. So what can you tell us? Because quite frankly, this is a question I think that everyone has.
It is a question that everybody has, and it's also perhaps one of the most important questions because we know that fear about the vaccine or concern about vaccine safety is a leading reason why people are choosing not to get immunized. So if I had to answer this question in one sentence, the answer is that we know that the vaccine is a lot safer than getting COVID-19 infection. So it's really important when we talk about the risks of the COVID vaccine that we keep in context what we know that the risk of not being vaccinated is. And we're seeing continued high rates of COVID transmission. We're seeing still really high rates of complications and mortality, particularly in our most vulnerable population, including older adults, people with heart disease and diabetes. So to put that in context, relative to that, the vaccines are incredibly safe. So for a little bit more detail, just so that the audience knows, each of the currently available vaccines that we have in the United States have been studied in clinical trials of about 30 to 40,000 patients. So these aren't vaccines that we don't know a little bit about. We actually know a lot about their vaccine safety, particularly due to the size of the clinical trials. Beyond that, we have a number of systems in place that monitor vaccine safety even after the vaccine is being given to the public. And we know that tens of millions of Americans have already received the COVID vaccine. I think the latest number I heard was over 90 million doses of COVID vaccine has been given in the US. So we know a lot. So what do we know? Well, the first thing we know is that there is a risk, a very rare risk, of a severe allergic reaction called anaphylaxis. The good news for that is that it happens usually soon after you get the vaccine, and it's very treatable. We know how to treat allergic reactions, and that's why you're asked to wait 15 to 30 minutes after you get your vaccine before you leave the vaccination site. Other side effects that we're seeing from the vaccine, none of which are life-threatening, tend to be things that are related to your immune system actually mounting a response. So frequent side effects are things like fatigue, headache, low-grade fever. It's very common to have a sore arm or some pain around the injection site. This usually happens within the first day or two and is usually gone within a few days. So it's sort of uncomfortable. You might plan to take it easy, especially after the second dose when the rates of side effects are a little bit higher after the second dose compared to the first. But it's nowhere near how bad you'll feel if you get COVID infection. And the good news is when you have those side effects, it means that your body is recognizing the vaccine and is building up those all-important antibodies to help protect you from severe infection.
Yeah, I think you made a lot of great points in that explanation you gave us there. I did want to hit on something that you mentioned. You mentioned we had these large group trials that people participated in, upwards of 30,000+ people. That is not the concern for a lot of people who are maybe reluctant to get the vaccine. A lot of people are saying they just happen too quickly. Can you speak to that? Can you say that they are safe, even though they may have happened a little more quickly than a typical trial?
So I don't think we should hold how quickly these trials were conducted against the studies. In fact, it's kind of incredible that we were able to get so many people enrolled so quickly. So the speed of starting the study doesn't affect our ability to learn from it. And all of those 40,000 patients in each of those studies were monitored very closely for side effects, both people who were given the vaccine and people who were given a placebo, to see if there's a difference between the two arms. The one thing that we don't know is sort of long-term data on these vaccines. So the trials have been done in a sort of a short time frame, and we have follow-up for a subset of folks who've been given vaccine early for 6 to 8 months at this point, but we don't have follow-up for years down the road. So it is true that there is certainly the possibility that there's some sort of long-term thing that could emerge related to vaccine safety. But the reality is that we don't have any really great examples of that happening from other vaccines where there's a safety signal that happens far down the road. And again, this is really a clear and present danger of COVID-19 infection. So at least in the short term, particularly in that vulnerable period when your body is building up an immune response, we are pretty comfortable with what we know are the rates of side effects and what to expect in terms of risk.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely thought it was worth something discussing because, I mean, here in Northwest Arkansas, we have specifically heard from people who say, look, the trials just happened too quickly. We're not getting our vaccine. But it's responses like that that I think are very educational to the people who maybe are a little more reluctant. So thank you for that. Let's go ahead and move into our main segment, live viewer questions, and you ask, we answer. As a reminder, while we're talking today, you can submit your questions in the comments or send them to us at heart.org/housecalls. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Our first question comes to us from Shelly in Helena, Montana. Shelly wants to know, can I request a specific vaccine? Is one better than the others? Dr. Navar?
So generally speaking, you probably cannot request a particular vaccine. What I would strongly recommend and what the public health officials recommend is to get the first available vaccine that's offered to you. There are pluses and minuses to the different vaccines. There are 2 mRNA vaccines, one from Moderna and one from Pfizer. Those were tested in clinical trials, and in those studies have about a 95% efficacy at preventing COVID-19 infection. They do require 2 doses, and it's a little bit more challenging to transport and store those. On the other side, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has the benefit that it only requires 1 dose, so you're protected much more quickly. Now, in the studies, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine efficacy was less. It was not as high of efficacy as Moderna and Pfizer. However, it was studied at a different time period. So the infectivity of the COVID strains that were circulating may be different, and the background rate of COVID infection was also different. So important to note that you can't really take the percent efficacy from the 2 trials and say that one vaccine was necessarily better than the other, because they were studied at different time periods and they've never been compared head to head. So what I would recommend, and is along the lines of what most public health officials do, which is get the first vaccine that you have available to you. Because if you wait for a different vaccine, then you're leaving yourself totally unprotected for whatever that undetermined period of time would be.
Yep. Get it as soon as you possibly can. Jill from Maryland, her question is specific to the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. How much protection will I have after the first shot?
It's a good question. The short answer is the studies were not designed specifically to test that in great detail. But we do have some information from those studies, which is it looks like you get about 50% efficacy after just 1 dose. Now, importantly, it's not immediately after that first dose. It does take your body a couple of weeks to mount that antibody response. Now, 50% sounds great, and it's certainly better than nothing, but that's not enough to really dramatically change your overall risk of infection. And so really what the CDC recommends is that you do not consider yourself vaccinated and start doing the things that vaccinated people have been approved to do until 2 weeks after you get the second dose of Pfizer or Moderna vaccine. And that's why it's really important for you to get that second dose scheduled at the time that you get your first dose, so that you make sure that you get the second dose right when it's recommended, and you maximize the amount of protection that you get from the immunization as a whole.
Yeah, don't skip out on that second dose. Adrian in South Carolina wants to know, how long will COVID vaccine protection last? Will I have to have a booster shot at some point? You know, this is a question I think a lot of people are wondering.
Well, it's a question that scientists are wondering too, and it's something that scientists are actively studying. So we don't know yet. As we talked about earlier in the show, we don't have so much time with the vaccine to know how long the immunity persists. We do know that for a lot of vaccines, that immunity can wane over time, antibody levels can go down. But on the other hand, there's a number of ways that your body sort of creates immunologic memory. So even if your antibody levels drop, your immune system's ability to respond to something that it's been vaccinated against can continue. So there's two factors that affect whether or not we're going to end up needing a booster One is the duration of immunity that we get from that first vaccine, but the second is what happens with the virus itself. And if that virus starts to mutate, we're really familiar with influenza, which changes year to year. And so we have to get a new flu shot each year to continue to adapt along with the virus. It's certainly possible that we'll see something similar with COVID, where we are going to end up needing a booster shot to adapt to new variants of COVID or coronavirus as it emerges, but we just don't know yet. So it's something that we're still studying, and it's something that I think that we'll have the answer to in the next several months, particularly as we get longer and longer term follow-up from those early vaccine studies.
Well, you answered my next question. I was going to ask you, at what point do you think we can know? So a couple of months doesn't sound too bad, especially when we've really been navigating this all as a whole together. So thanks for answering that. We do have one more quick question before we hear from our audience. So Miguel asks, does the vaccine protect against the variants? I'm guessing they're talking about the different variants, the UK variants that we've seen here in the US. So can you speak to that?
Well, these are some really great questions from the viewers, and we have some reassuring data and some concerning data. On one hand, we have a number of lab studies that show that the antibodies that we get from either prior infection or from vaccine do work against a number of the different variants. On the other hand, some of these studies show that maybe they don't work as well. So what's probably true is that the effectiveness of the antibodies we either generate from infection or we get from a vaccine is going to be different for different variants. And there are some data that some of the variants may respond less well to vaccine. Now, what we don't know is if that means that these vaccines don't work at all, or if they're just not as effective. So this is why it's really, really important that even once you're vaccinated, that you continue to follow CDC and other public health authority recommendations to help contain the spread otherwise. Because even if the vaccine is less effective, if you combine that with mask wearing, social distancing, and the other behaviors that we've done to help lower the spread of COVID-19, we can still see really widespread population effectiveness of vaccine campaigns, even if the virus becomes a little bit less susceptible to the antibodies that we're generating.
Absolutely. Great discussion so far, Dr. Navarre. We're going to take a quick break, though, so we can hear from you, our viewers, everyone who's watching at home. Grab your phone and get ready to text in your answer. Now, remember, it's really easy. All you have to do is text AHA Live to 22333 to answer. If you haven't already registered, you can go ahead and do it. But if you have already registered, don't worry, you don't have to do it again. And maybe you're just joining us from a computer and it's just easier for you to drop it in the comments. Well, go for it. We're reading those too. We've got a couple comments on the YouTube stream right now. We just want to hear from you and give you a chance to engage with us. So this question concerns nutrition, specifically cooking from home, especially since it's something we've all been doing a lot more of. If you didn't already know, March is National Nutrition Month. So here's our question for you. Which statement best describes your cooking style? You don't cook. You choose easy recipes that don't take too long to prepare. You consider yourself a chef, or complex recipes with exotic ingredients intrigue you. So go ahead, take a moment to jot down what fits you best. And while we do that, I'm going to tell you about the American Heart Association's 10 Under 10 cookbooklet. It's out this month, just in time for National Nutrition Month. For those of you who want to offer your family nutritious meals, but maybe don't have tons of time, this one seriously is for you. 10 under 10 simply means 10 recipes comprised of less than 10 ingredients that cost under $10. Look, it sounds like a mouthful, but ultimately it's a great investment. So make sure you go ahead and check it out. So I'm seeing our answers come in, Dr. Navarre. And it's looking like we have a lot of people who are doing the B. I choose easy recipes that don't take long to prepare. And I tell you, that's where I'm on the list. How about you?
I think honestly, it's probably depending on the day of the week. Maybe once or twice a year, I would be in category C. And there are certainly days where I just don't have it in me to even do something simple. I love things like this 10 under 10 sort of simple recipes, because it certainly does lower the bar on those days you don't feel like cooking. At least if it's easy, it's something you can throw together fast.
And they're delicious. You know, if you haven't taken a chance to check it out, I encourage anyone who maybe their ears perked up when they heard 10 under 10, go check it out. Lots of good stuff there. Let's go ahead and move on and get back to some more of your viewer questions on vaccine and how we can continue to protect ourselves and all of our neighbors. So this one, Dr. Navarre, comes to us from Marla in Hot Springs. She asks, what is the guidance on kids getting the vaccine, and how will they be protected?
Well, I'll answer the second half of that question first, which is, for now, the way that we're protecting our kids is by getting vaccinated ourselves as adults. So currently, none of the available approved vaccines are available for children. I think one of them goes down to 16 for FDA approval, but generally speaking, these vaccines are for adults. So there are clinical trials underway now that are enrolling children who are 12 and older. But it's going to be a while before we know the safety and effectiveness of these vaccines in children, especially in the younger children. So this is why it's critical that we break the cycle of transmission by doing what we can as grown-ups to protect our children. That means getting vaccinated and continuing to do things like wear masks and socially distance so that we can protect our children. So if we can keep adults from getting it, we are likely to help prevent children from getting it too.
Kathleen from Scranton, Pennsylvania wonders, can I still get COVID if I get the vaccine?
You can, and this is where the variants actually start to come into play. We will continue to study this, but it does look like some of the variants may be affecting the effectiveness of the vaccine. So the vaccine may work, but just not as well. So yes, you can still get COVID. The good news is, so far, it looks like even folks who get COVID after the vaccine are way less likely to get severe cases of COVID and haven't been dying or being put in the hospital like folks who have not been given the vaccine. So even if the vaccine efficacy is lower and you're one of the unlucky few to get COVID after the vaccine, the likelihood that you die or hospitalized is dramatically lowered. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. The vaccine is highly useful even if it's not 100% effective. But it also means you have to keep protecting yourself, because the vaccine is not 100% guarantee that you cannot get COVID infection.
Thank you for clearing that up, because I think we've heard some people spewing that information out there. We want to make sure that they know that just because you have the shot doesn't mean you can't get it. All right, we do have a couple more questions to get to before we run out of time. This one's from Susan in Baton Rouge. She asks, I'm pregnant. Can I get vaccinated against COVID-19?
There's some mixed recommendations here. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists say that we should not be withholding COVID vaccine from pregnant women or women who are lactating. And in fact, they say that requiring an in-depth conversation with your doctor about it may actually kind of be a barrier for women to get it. And so they're more on the pro-vaccine side. The CDC has taken a more neutral stance and says that it's a personal choice that women should discuss with their physicians. The truth is that the vaccines have not been studied extensively in pregnant women. They have been studied a little bit, and those clinical trials are ongoing now. So we'll know a lot more about the safety of these vaccines in pregnant women later. From my perspective, I think the choice to get a vaccine if you're pregnant largely depends on your risk of getting COVID infection. So if you're a healthcare worker around a lot of people with COVID and you're pregnant, your risk of COVID is quite high. That may change your willingness or interest in getting vaccinated than if you work from home and can completely isolate until your pregnancy is over.
That's an interesting point. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach for these women. Got it. Thank you for explaining that. Our final question today comes from Alaska. Hello to everyone watching us in Alaska. Here's what Tanya wants to know. Once I'm fully vaccinated, can I see my grandkids? Do I still need to social distance and wear a mask when I do?
So the short answer is yes, and we've spent a lot of time talking on the show today about how there's variants and the vaccine isn't 100%, and you still have to do all of these things, and all of that is true. And because of how effective the vaccine is and because it's so good at preventing severe complications of COVID-19, CDC has updated their guidance and says that if you're fully vaccinated, you can visit households of unvaccinated people, particularly if they are not themselves at increased risk of severe infection. So if your grandkids do not have chronic illnesses that put them at much higher risk of COVID infection, then you are welcome to visit them. CDC is still recommending to not go on non-essential travel. So ideally, your grandkids live down the street or you can drive to them because there is still a recommendation to avoid non-essential travel. But from a safety standpoint, you can go see your grandkids and not only just see them, you can hug them. So get that vaccine, but don't forget, 2 weeks after the second dose of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccine, or 2 weeks after the first dose of Johnson & Johnson. You can't get your first shot and run and visit them on the way home. You need to give yourself a little bit of time for your body to build up that level of protection.
Well, I can tell you, I bet our fully vaccinated grandparents are jumping out of their chairs right now at that news. They're so excited to hear that, Dr. Navar.
Well, it's great. It's great to have so many effective vaccines and to start to get back to that really important part of our life, which is human connection with each other.
Absolutely. Look, we appreciate you being here with us today, especially throughout this vaccine discussion. We know it's something that we're waiting to learn more information on, so it's not easy to talk about at this point. But really, I know that you've put my mind at ease. I can't wait to get my shot or shots, whatever, I end up getting, because like you mentioned, just get whatever is available to you. So with that being said, I want to open the floor to you and see if there's anything else you'd like to add before leaving us today, Dr. Navar.
I just want to say that this is really an ongoing field of study, and there are tons of really smart, dedicated scientists and public health officials that are doing their best to answer all of these questions. I think the CDC has done an excellent job of maintaining up-to-date information on their website about all of these questions: vaccine safety, vaccine efficacy, the variants. There's even a special hotline for pregnant women to answer questions about receiving COVID-19 vaccine. So I would strongly encourage those of you who continue to have questions or just want to stay up to date with the latest science to keep a bookmark on the CDC website. And I know the Heart Association has also done a really good job at trying to maintain up-to-date resources at heart.org.
Well, Dr. Navar, thank you for joining us these past 2 weeks. We've so appreciated having you. And thank you to everyone for watching us. That does it for our show today. But before we sign off, I'd like to remind you to continue your vigilance. As Dr. Navar alluded to several times throughout the show, we are not out of the woods just yet. Most of us have not received our vaccination. So please, please, please take care of yourselves. And remember those 3 W's: wear a mask, wash your hands, and watch your distance. Also, don't forget about the International Stroke Conference 2021. That'll be held March 17th through the 19th. It's 100% virtual this year, and the premier event for late-breaking news on stroke and brain health science from across the globe. You can register now at stroke.org. As always, you can find any of our previous House Calls shows at heart.org/housecalls. And we want to say again, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Chelsea Helms, and I will see you back here next Monday. See you then.
Welcome to At the Heart of It.
Learn more about House Calls, Real Docs, Real Talk, and submit your questions at heart.org/